Alright, this picture is going to help me explain about four of the most commonly asked questions about flat Earth. Now, when I first learned about this is one of the first pieces of evidence that I heard about, that the horizon rises to eye level. And I didn't really understand it at first, but as time went on, I understood it more and more. And now I see how strong of evidence this is. If this isn't enough to make you know the Earth is flat, it should be at least enough to make you suspicious. Um, I haven't heard any good arguments for this phenomena, except for people just straight up denying that it happens. So this is all basically based off the fact that the horizon rises to your eye level no matter how high you go. And people will just straight up say that it doesn't. It doesn't. And they have this app that they use, and it's supposed to lock onto the position of the horizon at sea level, and then as you ascend, it shows if the horizon is staying with your eye level or if it's going down. And I've seen pictures that show the horizon like way below, the center, but I think people are just lying because I've been in so many airplanes. I've seen it with my own eyes. If you haven't been in an airplane, you can go on YouTube and watch any video of anyone, a construction worker, a pilot, ascending into the air with a full shot of the horizon, and you'll see that it rises with you all the way to cruising altitude. And there's even videos of it rising up to 22 miles, which is like the highest we can go with weather balloons. So I'll start explaining. This is what most people believe. This is what most globe earthers believe. They believe that because your eye level is above the ground, that you should be able to see forever until there's an obstruction like a hill or a building or whatever. But this is literally based off of nothing. There's no reason to think we should be able to see forever, because how our eyes really work is like this. We have three fields of view. We have the sky above us, we have our eye level, the space directly in front of us, and the water beneath us, right? So when we're standing on the ocean, the horizon is 3 miles out. Now, the horizon is caused by so the sky is always parallel, always perfectly parallel. So is the ocean, but that's just not how we perceive it. That's not how our eyes work. So the sky, as it goes, as it moves away from us, it's going to appear to go down. And as the ocean appears to move away from us, it's going to appear to go up. So what's going to happen? These three views are going to collide, and they're going to create the horizon. Now, the reason you can't see further than the horizon is because the ocean rises up until it hits that perfect sweet spot at your eye level, where you can no longer see the surface of the ocean, but you can still see basically the sky past it. And you can understand how this works easily by just going to your kitchen table and aligning your eyes so you're at that perfect point where you can't see the surface of the table, but you can still see past it. It's really easy to do. Just go do it in 2 seconds and you'll understand what I mean. So that's why we can't see further than 3 miles. And the way to prove that this is true, that this is really how your eyes work, is like this. I have a simple experiment you can do, a simple thing. Just go to the beach, stand on the shore, and just take a nice level picture of the horizon. So when you take the picture, you're going to realize that obviously the water that you're standing in is beneath your eye level, and that there's depth between you and the horizon in the distance that you see. There's depth. So if you look at this picture that you took, you're going to see the exact same image that you saw through your own eyes. Now, if you're able to see everything you saw with your own eyes and put it into a second dimensional image like this, that means that what you were seeing was not 3D, it was 2D. We live in the third dimensional realm, third dimensional world, but our eyes are still confined within the second dimension. If we were theoretically to enter into the fourth dimension, then we'd be able to see in the third dimension. And seeing in the third dimension, it's hard to imagine, but basically, we wouldn't have sunsets because if we were able to see in the third dimension, we would be able to see depth. Right now, we can't see depth, we can only understand it. If this is an exact image of what you saw and what you perceived as depth, but now it's within this 2D picture, then that means that now there is no more depth. Now, the distance between the ground and the horizon is the same. There's no depth to it. This line isn't further than this line. So now what you have is the water going up and the sky going down until they meet the horizon. And that perfectly validates and proves what I'm saying here about our vision working like this. Because this water obviously isn't moving up. It's not rising up to our eye level at 3 miles out, right? That's just how we're perceiving it. We know it's still below us. So if we were able to see in 3D, we could look at a box like this, and all we can see is a square. But imagine that this has depth, and it's a rectangle, and it's like 5 feet deep. If we were able to see in 3D, we would be able to look at the face of this box and see the depth. We'd be able to see through this and see every corner and everything about this box. But because we can only see in the 2D, we can only see the face from this position. If we were able to see in 3D, we would be able to see a box like this. We'd be able to see through it, around it, behind it, under it. This is a good example. If I line 5 books up and I stand in front of the first book, so it's blocking the other 4 books. In a third dimensional view, I'll still be able to see every single one of these books. I'll be able to see around this first one, under the second one, over the third one. I'd be able to see it all. But if I wanted to take a picture of it and put it into a second dimensional image like this, I wouldn't be able to do it because these books are overlapping each other. It would just be clutter and a mess. You wouldn't be able to make it out. You'd be able to see more with your eyeballs than the picture, right? But in reality, it doesn't work like that. Even if it doesn't matter where you are, anything you see with your eyes, you can take a picture of and capture it in a second dimensional picture. So that's proof that we can't see in 3D. So another one of the most commonly asked questions is how do buildings or objects go below the horizon? Why do they disappear from the bottom up? And this ties in perfectly with what I was talking about us only seeing in 2D. So imagine this is the building standing next to you, and this is how big it really is. So if the building begins to move away on this parallel floor, this parallel ocean, then what's going to happen? As it moves away, the top of it is going to go down, and the bottom of it is going to go up. And then, just like we all know happens, as the building goes away, it shrinks. The bottom and the top shrink. And if the object is small, if it's like a boat, then at 3 miles, it'll be completely invisible to your naked eye. You could still get a telescope and focus it on this boat that's invisible to your naked eye, and you'll be able to bring the entire boat back into view, which disproves what they say about the globe, but I'll get into that in a second. So since this building is so big, once it hits the convergence point, it's not going to fully disappear because it hasn't fully shrunk yet. So what's going to happen is once it hits that convergence point, the horizon, the bottom of it is no longer going to be visible because it's now parallel to your eyes, just like the ocean is, so you can't see it. All you can see is the top of it. So if you still see the top and it's past your convergence point, then as it moves away, what's going to happen? It's not gonna change what it's been doing this whole time. As it moves away, it's going to go down. So as it goes down and further away, it comes to a point where it goes below your eye level and you can't see it anymore. Now, even though this huge building is right here and it hasn't changed size, it's still big, it's still just like it is here. Even though this is the case, it's perfectly explained by perspective. If we were able to see buildings tilt away from us as they go behind the curvature, then that would be evidence. Then I couldn't make this argument, because if I see something leaning away from me, then obviously it's on a curve. But all the way until it fully disappears, buildings, anything, will remain straight up. And since that's the case, it can be explained on a flat earth and not on a ball. But all right, I'll get into this now. So another one of the most popular questions is, why can you see further the higher you go on a flat earth? So when you ascend to this height, the laws of your vision aren't going to change. It's going to be the same exact thing, except now, since you're higher up, the water beneath you is going to have to travel a further distance to hit your eye level. So because it's traveling a further distance, that means you'll be able to see a further distance. And this raw distance here, this line, it'll be the same as it was here, because our eyes are just, they're just confined within that space. But even though we only see 3 miles here, since we're elevated here, we'll be able to fit like 40 miles within this little line. Because if you just imagine being in an airplane and looking down at the earth, and then measuring about a mile in your fingers, and you have it measured, you have it lined up, and the airplane ascends twice the height. Now, you'll still have that same mile within this little space in your finger, except the mile will go from taking up all the space to just taking up a small space. So you'll have more room to see more. You'll be able to fit more distance within this space, even though I never changed the position of my finger. So it makes perfect sense that the higher we go, the further we see. I mean, if you find some surface that you know is completely flat, just hold your cell phone very close to the floor, as close as you can, and you'll see the horizon. The horizon to your phone's view is going to look much closer than if you pick your phone up to your eye level. And just that little simple thing proves that the horizon is just a product of how our eyes work. That's it. It has nothing to do with the earth. The horizon has nothing to do with the earth. It's just our vision. That's it. Yeah, so the sun sets for the same reason the buildings set. The sun is in the sky. It's moving parallel, but it still has to obey this law. As it goes away, it goes down. So since the sun is so huge, by the time it hits, a mere 3 miles or whatever, it's actually like 4,000 miles before it starts setting, I think. But since the sun is so huge, once it hits that convergence point, it's not going to just disappear like into a small dot. You're still going to be able to see a good amount of it, except once it passes this, just like the buildings, it's going to continue going down, so you don't see it anymore. There's a lot of things to prove that when the sun is on the horizon, it's not actually below you, because when it's like just about to fully set, you can see a green tip on the sun, a green tip. Now, the way light prisms work is they go through an object and then they shoot downward. So for us to see a green tip on the sun means that it's above us, because if it was at our eye level or below us, then that prism would shoot down, and it would I don't know who would see it, but you definitely wouldn't see it because it's nowhere near going in your direction. But if it's still up here and the prism's shooting down here and you're only perceiving it to be here, then it makes perfect sense. That and the fact that the sun it refracts into the ocean as it's setting, that's proof that it's inside of the atmosphere. But yeah, so that's why the sun sets. And finally, the globe. This is what the globe earthers think. They think that when they're on the beach and they're looking out on the horizon is the highest point of the sphere from where they are. So the reason they can't see any further, obviously because the ground past that highest point just goes down. It goes down. And it doesn't matter how big the earth is, it doesn't matter how subtle the curve is. Spheres, they always have to be curving. And a lot of people say like, oh, the earth is so huge, so the curve is so small and it's mostly just flat everywhere. But if you say that, then you're totally ignoring the measurements we have of the earth. So one way or another, you think that you're being lied to, because either the earth is flat or the earth is ginormous, and it can't be ginormous because we're seeing boats supposedly go under curvature at 3 miles. 3 miles, so it can't be that big. 25,000 miles isn't that big. We have equations for how much curvature there should be on this sphere, right? So you can't ignore that. So let's try and imagine what would happen if we were on a sphere. So this is the horizon, the highest point. If you were to ascend from that point, the horizon that you were looking at on ground level, it's still going to be there. There's no reason for it to rise because there's no parallel land behind it like there is on a flat earth. So that's the highest point. So as you ascend, instead of looking straight like you actually do and see the horizon on your eye level, instead of doing that, you would have to look down drastically. The higher you go, the more you'd have to look down. If you wanted to see the horizon from your airplane window, you'd have to look down. And even if the curve is so subtle that it wouldn't drop that much, it would still at least stay at that same point it was when you were looking at it on ground level. Because if you're up here and you apply the same principle of how our eyes work, this ground has to rise up to meet your eye level. But the thing is, the ground is curving. So if there's no land past this horizon that's higher than this horizon or level with this horizon, then it can't rise up with you. And also, the higher you go on a sphere, the further the horizon would become. On a flat earth, the horizon stays eye level and it stays the same distance away from you. You could fit more miles within this distance, but it's still the same raw distance. If you're on a globe, think about it. You rise up, and the more you look down, the further you'd have to look, because the horizon, it goes down and out. So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. You can't have a horizon rising to your eye level on a sphere. Literally, no one can prove this wrong. No one can prove it wrong. I'm not sure if I said this, but the only thing I've heard people say is that it's not true. And it is. I encourage you to go look for yourself, get on an airplane, watch YouTube videos, and yeah, really try and understand this because it is important. And once you... Alright, so I'm gonna finish off that last video with 3 more things I want to address that I know people will be asking me. First, as you rise, you see further distances. So a lot of people think, okay, well, if the Earth is flat and I can go 20 miles in the sky, why can't I see the whole flat Earth from that altitude? Why can't I see the edge? And the reason is because the distance you can see is basically just geometry. The distance you can see far is basically just going to be this distance here, the distance that it takes the water beneath you to reach your eye level. So you would need to be extraordinarily high to see the whole flat Earth, assuming it's at least 30,000, 25,000 miles around. I think the highest we can go is about 22 miles, and that's when the pressure is just too much. That's the maximum height that all the weather balloons reach before they pop, and they can't go any higher. I think anyone who claims to go higher than that is probably lying. I can't believe that people can't even entertain the idea of that space footage being fake, because we know they're capable. Like, everyone goes to the movies. We know CGI is amazing. I'm sure within the past 10 years we've all been like, wow, that looks so good, it looks so real. But yet when it comes to these photos, like, you just can't fathom that maybe they're not real. I don't get it. But okay, so I explained that. So theoretically, if you were to rise high enough to see the edge of the flat Earth, then that's the point where the horizon would stop rising. It would start dropping. It would start descending, because past that edge, there's nothing. There's either nothing or there's more ground that's curving downward, like on the globe. So if we were on a globe, that's basically what we would experience, because if you're at ground level and you're looking at the horizon, and the horizon is the highest point on the sphere, then that means that it's technically the edge of your vision. It's the edge, because after that point, it just goes down. It drops. It's an edge. So if you were to ascend, the horizon, I guess depending how big the Earth is, it would either remain exactly where it is, meaning it wouldn't rise. The more you rose, the more you'd have to look down. It would either just stay like it is, or it would descend rapidly. It would probably descend rapidly, judging by, the curvature that we think we see. Like, it's only 3 miles out. That can't be that big of a ball. And okay, and now this. So when you're at sea level, you can see 3 miles to the horizon, right? And earlier I said that the sun sets at about 4,000 miles. And the reason for that is because the sun is very high up here. The higher the object is, obviously the further distance it's going to have to travel before it meets the convergence point, because if it's higher up, basically this line in your upper field of view is going to become like more straight, and it's not going to be as drastic as it would be if it was lower to the ground. You can prove this just by taking a picture, like in a long corridor. You take a picture, and then you look at the picture and look at the ceiling. The ceiling, do like I did earlier, drawing the lines up the ocean and down the sky. If you draw the dots down the ceiling of this corridor, you'll see it goes down super fast. But the sun is so big and so high that it's a slower process, and it happens about 4,000 miles away, because the distance between USA and Australia, I'm guessing, is like 8,000 miles. So if the sun sets here and rises there at the same time, then it's in the middle. That's 4,000 miles. It's just a guesstimate. Okay, so now the sun. When the sun sets, why doesn't it change sizes? It does change sizes. It changes sizes throughout the year. I have seen it rise and come toward me and get bigger as it approached me. I've seen it. Sometimes it gets bigger as it sets because of atmospheric lensing. Atmospheric lensing. It's basically like if you look at an image through a water bottle, it's going to be magnified. So the atmosphere is air, and air is technically fluid. So air could magnify, the sun. But my main point is that the sun we shouldn't expect it to shrink too much, because when people when people have it in their head that the sun should like shrink massively as it sets, their 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 logic is flawed, because they're imagining the sun as if it was like eye level with you. Because when you're eye level with something and it moves away from you, it shrinks really fast. But if it's high above you, that's a huge factor. Look, let me show you. Alright, let's see if I can do this. Alright, so look at these bottles. Look at these bottles. They're both the same exact size, and they're level with each other. Except the one that's closer looks way bigger than the one that's further, right? Okay, so now let's imagine that this computer is your view, and these bottles are the sun, and the sun was here, and now it's over there, right? So if you were eye level, it would look a lot smaller, but if the sun was high in the air, then the higher it is, the more the size of it is going to be the same, even though one is 4 feet away from the other one. So it's kind of a vague example, but you can understand. I mean, given the right proportions, like the sun being huge and really high in the sky, it makes sense that it doesn't shrink. It's just, I think that it's perfectly explained through this experiment. You know, this experiment is just on a small scale. If you can do something on a small scale, usually you can do it on a larger scale. But yeah, that's it. That's my proof, my flat Earth proof. War is over. If you want it.